All right, it looks like I'm recording. All right, so I'm going to try to keep this relatively short since the college is closed and class is technically canceled. I really don't want to make you have to do a whole lot of work outside of class time. With that said, I also feel like we have a whole lot to cover in this class, and so I feel like it would be wrong to try to push too much back to the next week. I'm just going to go through the timeline of things so you can kind of see where we're at. So this week we are looking at the SWOT and competitor analysis. You should have picked which company that you would like to be focusing on. I haven't looked at the discussion yet to double check to see if there's any like overlap or anything like that. I'm going to be taking a look at that and replying to them so that way you know if everything is fine with them. Just based off the conversations that we've been having, I haven't seen anything that I think would be an issue to go ahead and start working on. So I think you should all be fine with that. But if you haven't posted on there, go ahead and post on there, even if it's later, just because then it helps give a record where we can go back to it. Sometimes when people submit assignments, they don't always remind me of what the company is too. So it's nice to be able to have a place to go back and take a look. All right, so we're going to be covering SWOT analysis. So I want to make sure that I give you plenty of information so that way you can do that on your own. With that said, we are going to cut out a little bit of the work that we'd be doing. I had a couple of activities in mind that we were going to do in groups, which we won't be able to do, but that'll be fine. And then you'll do your SWOT analysis homework. And then next week, depending on how time goes, I think it would be really great for you to share, hopefully with the whole class, and just kind of talk about the website that you're picking and kind of go over the SWOT analysis information, even if it's kind of more brief since it is a larger class. So that way we have time to go through everything. We'll kind of see how that goes. If it feels like we don't have enough time, I can always break everybody into kind of smaller groups or something. All right, so when you go to week 5, you're going to see that there are 2 PowerPoints. These are pretty small. I just wanted to make sure that they were separated because the topic information is a little bit different. I also have this information here for being able to do a personal SWOT analysis. One of the activities I was going to do was I was going to have you each do your own SWOT analysis. We'll get into that with the PowerPoint, but you're no longer going to need to do that. I just wanted to include some information so that way you could still take a look at that if you wanted to. There's also this SWOT analysis worksheet. Sorry, it looks like it's taking a little while to load. But these worksheets can help you when you are working on your homework assignment. Now, your homework assignment, you can just put everything into a single document. You could create a little table or even just write these in paragraphs where you have a couple strengths, a couple weaknesses, a couple opportunities, a couple threats. You don't have to use a sheet like this. If you do want to fill something like this out and have it be separate, that's okay too. If you can't fit everything into a single document, you can always put it in a folder and then zip it and then submit a zip folder. So either option will work fine. I have a link here. This is going to help with the part of the homework where you're supposed to come up with key performance indicators, and those help you measure performance and success. It looks like chatbot wants to talk to me. So there's a video that you can watch which will go over key performance indicators a little bit. What I really like about this is it breaks down the information and then it gives a bunch of different examples. So that way, if you're having a hard time coming up with ideas of what sort of suits you, you can go through this. So sorry, I'm having to scroll a little bit to get to it, but like here we have financial metrics as an example, customer metrics as different examples, process metrics, people metrics. So these end up being a little bit more internal, but for example, let's just go up here, customer metrics. So you could have how you measure the customer lifetime value. We'll get into some of these things a little bit. Customer churn rate. So what is the rate of customers leaving? Again, we'll kind of get into that word churn and what that means. So these you can use to kind of help you come up with what's going to be best suited, and you're just going to write them to the best of your abilities. I've got a video to watch, how to develop key performance indicators. And I don't know if there's going to be any ads or anything, but I found this video very helpful. It's only just under 6 minutes and it's pretty straight to the point. She writes everything out, so I think this will be a really good help for you as you try to come up with your key performance indicators. I have this video under homework, your strategy needs a strategy. It's just taking a little bit to load. And this one is before the ad played, it said 11 minutes, so it won't take too long to go through. What I really like about this is he talks about how you can focus on your branding, what makes your product different. I'm gonna go ahead and pause that. What makes your product different than others? Not trying to just be identical to everybody else, trying to find what makes your company different from other people and how you can leverage that to your benefit. And that's where you're going to be doing an analysis of the company, but then also you're going to do an analysis of the competitors as well. So that way you can make sure that you're finding what's going to work best for them, how they can stand out from everyone else. There's a little bit of reading, kind of going into some of these ideas a little bit more. If you feel like you are having a hard time understanding the information from the PowerPoint, that would be a good place to go. We're going to be talking about SWOT and then also Porter 5 forces as well. So this will go into that information a little bit too. How to define your target market as well. This can help. We are going to talk more about the target audience as well as personas, but when you are coming up with your key performance indicators, it can be good to already be thinking about your target market already, so that way you can really think about what exactly you can do with that audience. And then here we have the homework. We can go ahead and take a look at this before going into the PowerPoints. So you're going to perform a SWOT analysis. We'll talk about SWOT, but it's the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that your company or nonprofit is going to face. Once you've completed your analysis, you'll create a document. Now, I understand that this format can be a little confusing. Really, I just want to make sure that you hit on these things. So you can kind of format it in a way that makes the most sense for you. Some of these things might be sort of more yes, no statements. I do prefer if you can write things out in full sentences because it helps communicate the information more clearly. So for this first part, perform a SWOT analysis. So ideally, you would make a quadrant where you would have strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But if you can't do that, you could always just create paragraphs with bullet points, and you could have first paragraph with your strengths, next one with the weaknesses, and so forth. Identify the target audience. So just a sentence or two talking about who you think the target audience is. It's going to be okay if some of these things, aren't 100% correct. This is to the best of your ability based off of what you can tell researching the company. And that's one of the great things about doing all of the critiques and group work is you can get other people weighing in on things and giving you feedback on what they think as well. So you're not going to be completely on your own and trying to figure out the information, but I would definitely recommend trying to research as much as you can about the companies. If you feel like you can't find that much information, you can also look up kind of similar types of companies where maybe you can find information on them to help you come up with some ideas. Then you're going to need to come up with some key performance indicators. And that's why I have the resources for you to look these up to kind of help give you some ideas. And you want to try to be as specific as possible. And that's where I think that video is helpful because it helps break down what you can do. But the idea should be, what are you focusing on? How do you want that to grow? What is the amount of time? So if you just said, well, I want more people to come to the website, that's not really very specific, and you can't measure it to understand if it's actually working well. Like, let's say you're trying to come up with a marketing campaign. You can't really tell if that marketing campaign is being successful or not if you don't have a way of measuring it. So you could say, I want more people to go to the contact page. And so, and maybe it's even, I want them to go to the contact page and I want them to actually submit a contact form. So now you have a goal. You're going to try to direct people specifically to that page and actually fill it out. So you want to make sure it's not too difficult to get there. So you could say, I want this to grow by 2% over a year, and that could be the whole metric. Or let's say that you're trying to get more people to come to the website. In that case, it's not just people coming to the website. You want unique visitors coming to the website. And that's something that you could track using Google Analytics. Or if it's like a WordPress site, there's their own analytics built in as well. It's okay if what you are measuring doesn't, like, you don't actually know. Like, you don't know if 10% is achievable. You don't know if 1% is achievable. I'm not going to judge you by the percentage, but instead, I want it to be something that makes sense. If there's no reason for someone to go to the contact page on your website, if it doesn't really fit with what you want to explore in your redesign, then it doesn't make sense to measure the success of that. So if you feel like part of the website that you're looking at, you really think that they want donations, that one's kind of the more obvious answer. I mean, some people put that donation button right in the center, but I feel like some of you have already been exploring this idea where maybe some of the websites just don't really build a lot of trust in the company. So rather than focusing on just the donate button, your design would focus on how can we communicate that this is a trustworthy company so that people do donate. Your key performance indicator would still be that you want donations to go up by a certain amount. And again, you can kind of choose what you think would be believable. I can give you some feedback, but I'm not really worried too much about what that looks like. But you could say, I want the percentage of unique donations to go up by 5% over a year. You're not really going to have a way of measuring it, but it's going to help you have focus where you're going to know, okay, well, if donations are what I want to go up, what are the things that affect the donations? And then you can go to the idea of the trustworthiness, how they're finding the information. Does the donation, like, are they using a third-party source where it's actually pretty easy to do? Or is it something where you're just like sending money directly to a person where it might seem a little sketchy or something? Those are all the things that you can analyze with your design and you can kind of write about. So you're going to need 3 things, and it's going to be up to you. What things that you think are going to be the most important. It's going to be okay if there's, maybe there's something else that I think could be more important. If this is what you want to explore, I'm not going to judge that. Then next, I want you to look at the call to actions. The call to actions are the things that you can do on the page, and it's a really good place to analyze and figure out, like, what is the purpose of each page? So if you go to the first page and you think about what are the things that people can interact with, what are the things they could do on that page? So maybe there's just a number in the footer that you could call. That could be a call to action, is letting people know, like, here's the information. Usually call to actions are buttons though. So like a donation button, a sign up for a newsletter. And so I'd want you to go through each of the pages you plan on focusing on. So kind of roughly 5 pages. If it's a larger website, it's okay to not have to go through everything. Try to focus on the ones that you plan on redesigning. So 3 to 5 pages of content, and just kind of track out what are those actions that you can do. And then I want you to think, is the purpose value clear in the design? So this one ends up being a little bit trickier, I think, for people, but I want you to think of, like, what is the value of the website? And then also, what is the so what are they providing? And is it clear what they are providing? Sometimes the value is more obvious, like they're selling something, and so you can kind of tell what that is. But think of it like, what is the purpose, and is that being communicated clearly or not? I know this is one where people have a tendency to want to say, just like yes or no, but it can be really helpful to write out a little bit more information kind of explaining it, so that way it can help you focus, and then it gives me a clearer idea of what you really want to be working with. Next, responsive design consistent. This is just saying, you know, when it is a mobile site, does it fit those general conventions? Like, is it responsive? Does it resize down? Does it perhaps have a hamburger menu? Not all websites have to have a hamburger menu, but it's something that could be helpful just to save space. So, what sort of works well with that? Again, it could be kind of a yes or no, but if you could jot down some notes explaining why or why not, that would be helpful. Does the website display Conway's Law? And so I've got a link here. This is going to tell you a little bit more information. I do want you to take your time with this and kind of read through it first yourself. But here we have, this law is important because it has a lot of important facets. So kind of read through this. You'll notice here, in other words, the way the company is structured, hierarchy, etc. So read through this. You can also look up other information too. Here we have organizations which design systems are constrained to produce designs which are copies of the communication structures of these organizations. Is the content inserted in the right time and place? I think some of you have already been noticing that sometimes the content maybe would be better suited somewhere else. Maybe there's a huge info dump on the homepage. So kind of go through the pages that you're thinking about looking at and just take an idea of what the content is looking like write down your notes. Some of you have already been doing some of this, so you might already have some notes that you can use to fill in with this. What is the mental model? So we haven't talked about mental models yet. Mental models are how people think that things work. It doesn't always mean it's how things actually work, but the more experience that somebody has with something, the more that they are going to have kind of preconceived notions before they go into something, and it's going to feed into how they're expecting to experience something. So for example, if somebody is used to looking at websites on mobile phones, they're going to have an idea of how things are going to be formatted, again, with like that hamburger menu button. But there's also things like we're used to, if you click on a logo, that it takes us back to the home page. That's part of our mental model where we're used to it. If you go to a bank website, for example, you're used to bank websites being organized certain ways. And so that's another thing where it's helpful to go and look at competitors, because if the website that you are looking at doesn't really fit the general conventions people are going to expect, they could end up getting confused. So you can look at this from the standpoint of the device, like desktop, tablet, smartphone, but you can also look at it from the standpoint of how the content is similar to similar types of websites. Is there a gap in what it is and why it is? This question does tend to also confuse students a little bit, and it's okay to just kind of write things down the way that you see most fit. Really, it's just kind of going back to that idea, is the purpose clear? Is there an obvious intended audience? Who is it really serving? If that message isn't very clear, like if you can't find a mission statement or a vision statement, it's going to be really hard for you to work with. So you just want to identify that. This is another one where you might want to just like answer yes or no, but it would be helpful to say, well, why is it that case? Here we've got another law, Hick's law. And this is actually nice because there's a couple of different things written here. So like you can see Fitts law. So if you want to look at some of these other ones, but we have the time it takes to make a decision increases with the number of complexity of choices, or sorry, number and complexity of choices. This kind of goes back to what I was talking about with having a navigation where if you have more than like 7 things, it starts to be difficult for you to compare what those things are and decide which thing that you're going to look at. But you can go and look at some of these other things too. We're not going to be looking at all of them, but there's some really good ones. Like we've got productivity soars when a computer and its users interact at a pace that ensures that neither has to wait on the other. Laws of proximity, laws of similarity. So there's tons of things. We're only focusing on a few of them, but you might want to check this out for your own sake. What is the product value? Again, kind of going back to this idea, but it's I think it's nice to write it down so that way you're always going back and being present. So it's okay to have these things in a different order. Like for this one, what is the product value? If you don't like having it kind of skip around again, like if you want to sort of combine, is the purpose value clear with the product value? And this idea of, is there a gap in what it is and why it is, and you want to just sort of address those all in one paragraph, that's fine. I would just like for you to address all of these things. And then at the end, I'd like for you to write a conclusion. And so I basically want you to take all this information and think, okay, what is going to be the things that really need the most attention? You've already addressed things that are like working well. So, you know, putting all of that aside, what do you want to focus on as you continue? All right. So now we're going to get into the PowerPoint. You have an idea of all the resources. Hopefully you should have an idea of how this is going to tie into the homework. Technically, I don't have my office hours today, but I'll still check my email. So if you have any questions and you need clarification, you can still email me and you can still talk to me, Thursday or Friday. If you have more questions or, early next week would be fine too. So we're going to go ahead and open up this first PowerPoint. And I'll try not to take too much time to go through all of this. Like I said, I understand that technically we're not having class this week, so I don't want to give you too much to have to do on your own. I really just want to give you the tools so that you can understand some of these things a little bit better. So I mentioned that SWOT analyses, it contains strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I think this is a really good graphic, though it is cropped off. It's basically showing that we have things that are helpful, things that are harmful, things that are internal factors, which we have control over, and then things that are external that we do not have control over. And usually what I like to do at this time is have everyone do a personal SWOT analysis. If you go here, there are tools where it basically gives you directions for laying everything out, but I usually will give time where I will allow for you to write like a couple of things in each of these categories. And I really do think this is a great tool. You can use a SWOT analysis for all sorts of things, but it's a really good way for you to actually write goals and come up with what you want to do, because you can think about what things that you're really good at, what things are areas where you could use improvement. I think one of the best parts, though, is the opportunities and threats. What are the current threats that you are facing? What are the opportunities that you have? Now, as students, generally speaking, I feel like a lot of people end up writing kind of similar things. And that's what I like about doing this as an activity in class. It really shows that everybody's kind of in the same place. A lot of people are wanting to use being in school as an opportunity to land them a different type of job opportunity. So that ends up being kind of similar. A lot of people have mentioned kind of similar things with like threats, like maybe there were threats related to the job market during the pandemic, that kind of thing. And so I would like to have shared this, but I think it'll be nice to do it on your own. You don't have to do it, but I think it's a good activity to do. So here you can find out more information about how to use a SWOT analysis. I'll let you go ahead and watch that on your own, but it's not too long. And then here we just have a little information. What makes SWOT particularly particularly powerful is that with a little thought, it can help you uncover opportunities that you are well placed to exploit. And by understanding the weaknesses of your business, you can manage and eliminate threats that would otherwise catch you unaware. And it's really good to do something like this with a group of people. So that way it's not just you trying to brainstorm and figure things out. You're able to kind of bounce ideas off of more people. So more than this, by looking at yourself and your competitors using the SWOT framework, you can start to craft a strategy that helps you distinguish yourself. And we'll get into the competitors a little more. I'm not going to read through all this, but it's basically different applications that you can use. You can use this for all sorts of things. You can use it to look at different companies, and that's more of what we're doing. But there's also this idea of doing a personal analysis too. You can use it for, like, here you'll see personal financial planning. So you could read through this on your own and kind of see if there's anything that might be of interest to you, but these do get used a lot. So looking at this a little bit more, here we have strengths. So thinking about things, what advantages does your organization have? What do you do better than anyone else? What unique or low cost resources can you draw upon that others can't? What do people in your market see as your strengths? What factors mean that you get the sale? So when you are researching your company, you might not know all of these things. So I would say look at them at the same time that you're looking at competitors so you can kind of see what sort of things, and try to do some research on that type of nonprofit or that type of company so you can kind of get an idea as to what the expectations are. This is one of the benefits, though, of you focusing also on something that is local to you, because by doing that, you have a better idea of what the external factors are. What are kind of threats in the area? What are opportunities in the area? So for weaknesses, what could you improve? What sort of things should you avoid? What are people in your market likely to see as weaknesses? What factors lose you sales? Opportunities, what good opportunities can you spot? What interesting trends are you aware of? Changes in technology and markets on both broad and narrow scales, changes in government policies potentially, changes in social patterns, and then different local events. And then threats. What obstacles do you face? What are your competitors doing? Are quality standards or specifications for your job, products, or services changing? Is changing technology threatening your position? Do you have bad debt or cash flow problems? Could any of your weaknesses seriously threaten your business? So some of this, you're going to have to speculate, do the best that you can, try to come up with a couple things for each of the categories. And again, I'm not going to be grading you based off of like how accurate it is, like knowing the very specific information. But if you can write something that seems like it's well researched, and hopefully that didn't cut out, but if it seems like it's well researched and if it makes sense, that's more of what I'm going to be looking for. All right, so this is talking about using SWOT analysis in management and marketing. So it just kind of talks a little bit about how you can use that to your benefit. If you're using SWOT as a serious tool, make sure you are rigorous in the way that you apply it. Only accept precise, verifiable statements. And this is where I was saying before, like with key performance indicators, you want to be as specific as possible. Ruthlessly prune long lists of factors and prioritize. Like, you don't want to just have a ton of filler. You want to really focus on the things that matter the most. You don't want to get bogged down where it's too much information to really work with. Make sure that options generated are carried through to later stages. Apply it at the right level. Use it in conjunction with some other tools. And we're going to look at some other options. Now, this is really similar. This is Tao's matrix, and it's really the same grid. It's just instead focusing on the external factors first rather than the internal, because the external ones are ones that could really change like the opportunities, right? So rather than focusing on what you're bringing, focusing on things that are coming from outside. All right, so I wanted to provide an example for you. I'll let you read through this on your own, but this is looking at a small startup consultancy might draw up the following SWOT analysis. So you could use this to kind of help you brainstorm and get started. So we've got strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Here's the activity for doing a personal SWOT analysis. We're going to skip that. So some key points: SWOT analysis is a simple but useful framework for analyzing your organization's strengths, weaknesses, and the opportunities and threats that you face. It helps you focus. It can be used to kick off a strategy formulation. It can help you communicate and kind of get on the same page. When carrying out your analysis, be realistic and rigorous. Now, there are some other, as I mentioned, there's some other types of analysis that you can do too. Like here is a PEST analysis, P-E-S-T analysis. It's also a useful tool for understanding market growth and decline. It's a measurement tool, and it stands for political, economic, social, and technological. Now, this one I feel like is a little bit harder to do on your own. It kind of is helpful to do in a group. And in fact, usually what I do is I have everyone get into groups of like 4 or so people, so that way you can work with each other to come up with some examples. But this is an example of considering launching electric cars in the United Kingdom. So you have all the different political factors that could go into effect on something, different economic factors, different social factors, and different technological factors. So you'll notice that these are all external factors. So someone could do this in conjunction with a SWOT analysis. The SWOT analysis would be great because you're thinking about yourself and your own strengths and weaknesses, but this is really helping to break down the external things even further, and then from there you can think about the opportunities or threats that are associated with it. So usually for this activity, I will break people into groups and I'll have them analyze the college. Again, I try to pick on the college because it's something that we're familiar with, that you maybe have an easier time really thinking about. So in that case, you could think about, okay, maybe it's the college as a whole. So what opportunities, threats, or just factors, really, it could be kind of, you could think of it neutrally. What sort of things are going on with the college, for example, politically, economically, socially, technologically, and there's probably a lot going on that maybe students aren't really aware of. We don't really probably think about the college from a business standpoint, but all of those things could then get broken down to think about, okay, what sort of things could the college do to like market itself differently? All right, so you don't have to worry about that though. PEST analysis most commonly measures a market. A SWOT analysis measures a business unit. PEST analysis can be used for marketing and business development assessment and decision making. And the PEST template encourages proactive thinking rather than relying on just kind of habits or instincts. So a PEST analysis may be useful before you do a SWOT analysis, just because it helps break down all of the external things first before you start going into the SWOT analysis. PEST becomes more useful and relevant the larger and more complex the business. That's another reason why, for the SWOT analysis, I would have liked you to do a personal analysis because it's smaller, and then do a larger PEST analysis on the college because it's a lot larger and it's a lot more complex. I think it's probably a little too complex for you to maybe necessarily do with the websites that you're looking at. You could do it though. Like you could use that to help you come up with more information when you are trying to think about the opportunities and threats. So that way you don't get stuck and you're not really sure like what all that you could take a look at. All right, so here's another one. We don't spend as much time on this, but that's why I wanted to also give you some other resources on this. So this is Michael Porter's famous 5 forces of competitive position. And as you can see in the center, all of these factors are kind of up, I don't know if I want to say applying pressure, but they're all coming in towards the center. So you have supplier power, product and technology development, buyer power, new market entrants, and then it's all kind of going towards this competitive rivalry. So it's the 5 forces of competitive position and kind of different factors to think of. All right, so we have that PowerPoint. And then this one that is looking at competitor analysis. And this is information from this article, how to do a competitive analysis. I really liked this template. This is something that you could potentially do where you take your competitors, and maybe what you have is you have two competitors, maybe one of them is yourself, and then you can track the strengths and weaknesses, just kind of list some things out about each of them. And then you basically create a conclusion on the right side in a column. So that way you can kind of see, okay, here's where I stack up against these two other ones. What are some kind of key takeaways? What are things that are really standing out about each individual group? So here's this information from this article. Basically, it's just saying, you want to do better. You want to have a strong understanding of where you're really fitting in comparison to other people, be able to point out the differences and the similarities, and just try to be more targeted in what you're trying to do. Here's a quote that they have from Alina Wheeler: "The greater the insight into the competition, the greater the competitive gap." And I would really recommend, after this part, go watch the movie, or not the movie, sorry, the video that's talking about competitors and doing an analysis on it. So who on your team should be involved? It depends on your brand maturity. If you're totally new or a startup, you'll want co-founders and ideally anyone in the company with any brand or design experience. Basically, anyone who's going to be able to understand the branding and the focus of the project. Your competitive analysis can be broad or incredibly detailed. It's just saying, okay, here's some ways to get started. And this is why I was choosing information from this article, is I like that they had this kind of step-by-step. So first step they have is assemble a list of competitors. So just brainstorming, kind of get down some ideas, go to the internet, kind of research some other competitors that are in the area. Split them into two groups. So this is to help give you an idea of, who are the people that are kind of within your own range where you can push yourself to compete with them more. But then it's also nice to have your aspirational competitors, so that way you can look to see what are they really doing and how did they get there, so that way you can not just compete, but you can try to excel and really grow. Step 3, think about the different elements of brand. One of the things that I like to do, and why I have the picture to kind of bring this to mind, is really thinking about branding. Are there kind of similarities to different types of brands? For example, I like to ask the question, and I think I have my phone here somewhere, but if you have your phone and you were to look at all the apps that you have on your phone, if you think about it, like, I like to go around and ask, all right, on your phone, what apps do you have that are red? What apps do you have that are blue? What apps do you have that are orange? And kind of just going through all of the colors, you'll start to notice that there's similar patterns. What sort of colors do banks usually have? What colors do entertainment industries usually have? And you'll start to notice those things. So if you think about it, what sort of colors do your competitors have? Are they kind of gravitating to certain things? When I've helped the student agency with projects, or when I've looked at students' websites where they're looking at nonprofits that deal a lot with health, a lot of health organizations, they tend to use the color red. But sometimes, in order to get your organization to stand out, maybe trying to find another way to use red. So it's not just red is the primary color in your branding. So try to think about what sort of colors and like text and stuff that your nonprofit, your company is really using in their branding, but then also look at their competitors and see what they're using in their branding as well. But I think it's nice to do that activity. If you want to, just, look at your phone real quick, look at the kind of apps. Something else you could do is you could look at your computer. You could look at the software, what colors tend to get used. Blue gets used a lot for, I would say, kind of like productivity and communication things. Like you've got Safari, Like certain browsers have blue, some bank apps have blue. Productivity things like Word, Microsoft Office stuff, a lot of times will have blue. Entertainment stuff, a lot of times you'll see red used a lot, sometimes also purple or orange. So, just kind of take a look at, can you find certain commonalities? And what I like about doing this in class, and maybe this will come up again, is people all have different types of apps on their phone. So it's nice to see like what sort of things you maybe didn't know about. All right, comprehensive list of questions. So taking note of things, and this is why with your homework, I have you going through just kind of taking a lot of notes on things, but vision, mission, values. So if you can kind of look to see what your company has, what the competitors have, strengths and weaknesses, similarities, differences, threats. How is the value different? Is it the exact same value? Is there a slight difference to it? Is there a type of brand promise that they have? Different products or services, are those different? So the more detailed you are, the better you can classify your competition. But even if you do a high level analysis, you'll notice particular trends in the way your competitors do things, such as similar visual identities. And here's that example of like a lot of entertainment websites, for example, like Netflix and YouTube, both use red or messaging. These are the most valuable insights to help you better position yourself. So step 4 they have is articulate your own identity. Document the same elements for your own brand. As you identify your position in the market, you'll want to find a balance between emulating things that brands you aspire to compete with do, and then avoiding things that brands you don't want to compete with do. The challenge is to do this while remaining original and authentic. Something else that you can do, and I think this is a really great idea, is create some sort of quadrant. You don't have to do this, but it's a good thing to do. And choose 2 different variables that you want to look at, and then figure out where your competitors are on that, and then figure out where your brand is. So here they're giving a couple different examples, and this is called a Cartesian chart, but there's the idea of low cost versus high cost, low quality versus high quality, and that's what's in this graphic. So here they're saying that the brand here is a higher quality, but a lower cost compared to the competitors. But you could also look at like traditional versus contemporary, people focused versus automated. Is it very specific, or is it very comprehensive and kind of more broad? And you can do more than that. That's just a couple of different ways for you to think about it. All right, so those are the 2 PowerPoints. I would recommend then going and I would say watch this video next. Your strategy needs a strategy. He's going to talk about branding, and he has some really good examples of, you know, it's not always the best to try to just copy and chase after what other people are doing. A lot of times it's in your benefit to think about what you're doing well and if there's something unique that you can provide. So I would recommend watching this TED Talk next. And then as you start with working on your homework, then it would be good to, if you need to, there's that personal SWOT analysis information. There's SWOT analysis worksheet if you need it. There's this link here to the key performance indicators where there's a video included in that. This one has this video I like better. Both videos for key performance indicators are good, but this one I really like because she's really breaking down like how you can write down like percentages and stuff to just make sure that it's more specific. So I think that's a really good one to watch, but I would suggest starting with this one first and then going and looking at those as you work on the homework assignments. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end this. I'm going to upload it and give a little bit of directions. And then if you have any follow-up questions, just go ahead and email me and we could set up a time to meet too if you need to.